Hi, I'm Holly Richardson, creator of the Holly on the Hill blog, and welcome to On Point, presented by Sutherland Institute. Our panelists for today's show include Michelle Mumford, Assistant Dean at BYU's J. Reuben Clark Law School, and a recent candidate for the vacated Utah Attorney General position. Next is Tracy Gunderson. Tracy's a Planning and Zoning Commissioner for Draper City and former Director of the Utah Division of Consumer Protection. And the fourth member of our panel today is Tami Pyfer, newly appointed Education Advisor for Governor Gary Herbert, and former State School Board Chair for and the member for District 1 in Logan. Thank you all for being with us today, and our first topic is going to be right to Tami, and tell us about what you've been doing in education and what you look forward to.
Thank you for having me on the program. I just have recently been the State School Board Representative for District 1, which is northern Utah, the really prettiest part of the state up north. Cache Valley, Bear Lake area, Morgan, and Box Elder County, so quite an area. I was appointed to that position to fill a vacated term in February of 2010, almost exactly 4 years ago, and then was elected chair in December and served 2 wonderful months as chair, and then was just appointed this week to be the governor's education advisor. I had to resign from the board effective the next day on Wednesday. Too many conflicts, and then
it's a loss.
Well, I've just really
the board, but a gain for the state.
I have loved my service on the board. You know, when you work with people that closely and tackle some of these tough issues, there's just a lot of camaraderie that happens, and I've learned a lot too. I had to also I'm leaving my position at Utah State University. I'm a clinical instructor there part-time, and have been managing some research projects, and so I will leave that position as well and dive in full-time to the work for the governor and education issues.
So on the board, I know that you guys have had a little bit of a rough year with some of the issues that have come forward, but tell me what the job of an education director is. Help us understand what it is that you're going to be looking at.
My job is, as I see it, is to move the agenda of the governor forward on education, and it's been nice because I've seen what that agenda's been in the last 4 years in my role as on the state school board, and it's spelled out pretty well in the Education Excellence Commission that he's put together and running to improve education for every student in the state. And most recently, his 66 by 2020 goal, which is having 66% of the adult population with some type of secondary training, certificate, or degree by the year 2020, which is creeping right up on us very quickly. I'm not exactly sure what the baseline is. I was looking at some data county by county. I think in Cache County, at our event last night, we had an event that the chamber held. Thought it said that Cache County was something like 47 or in the high 40s with that type of data. But they did a study through Georgetown University about 18 months, 2 years ago, and said that by 2020 we're going to need this many. This is what the workforce will demand, and so that's what the governor and his commission is moving forward. Which is that's the way to state the end result. This is what we hope it looks like. But what that means is, we're going to have higher graduation rates. We're going to have better reading scores in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade. We're going to have better math scores, and we're going to have better math instruction. I mean, it all trickles down to better education for students.
Right. And we're looking at state-based curricula, right? We're not going to go federal, right?
We don't even, actually, Holly, we don't even have state-based curricula. We have local. Every school district in the state, the states do their own, or I'm sorry, the local school districts or charter schools have control over their own curriculum. We don't have it. I don't know how it is in other states, but Utah does not have a state curriculum.
That's great. That's good. That's good to know. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. Well, if you think of it, if you go from a charter school, then you go to the neighborhood school. The charter school might be doing Saxon math, and the district school might be doing something completely different. And that's because they're in control of their own curriculum.
But it seems like the issues that we're discussing all lead to the same end result.
Yes.
You know, whether it's a more pre-K instruction or full-day kindergarten or reading by 3rd grade is the standard. All of those are to get you to this certain.
And I think the fact that they've chosen this 66 by 2020 it's an end result that we can think about, and everyone can be on board with what that looks like. And then, as you said, Michelle, you backtrack that or reverse engineer it back to, and it does start with quality preschool for at-risk children that can prevent future problems, and then full-day kindergarten for those kids who need it, voluntary, and then it just really trickles down to the whole system.
My daughter started school in California. That's where we lived at the time, and it was full-day kindergarten. So that's kind of what I started to know, and then we moved here. I loved full day kindergarten, and you know, she wasn't at risk at the time, and it just made a difference in how much she was doing in school and how much she progressed that year. And you know, by the end of the year, they were writing letters and obviously reading, and it just seemed the standards were so sooner, you know, expected sooner.
You know, it's interesting. I homeschooled for a dozen years, actually, and I had some of my kids were early, you know, readers, and some were not. And I love that in Utah we have so many educational options, right? So I have kids now that are in traditional public school, the neighborhood schools. I have some kids in charter schools. I'm not homeschooling at all anymore, but during those times, I mean, I had some that were really early readers and were reading at 3 and 4, and some that did not read until quite a bit later. But one of the things also that I'm really interested in is looking at poverty and how we can help people out of poverty. And so the intergenerational studies that they're starting to come out with, even here in the state, are talking about this 3rd grade reading level, right? If you can be on level at 3rd grade, how that translates down the road to whether they can get out of that pattern and that cycle that they're in.
And that's what's nice about looking at this whole package that the Governor's Education Excellence Commission is looking at. They're looking at all of those pieces. And I know that the state school board just recently took a position on Senator Reed's bill on intergenerational poverty, a position of support for that. Also, another piece of data that I find interesting is the 3rd grade reading level. I was just looking at some statistics in Utah, and our 3rd grade reading isn't where we want it to be, but by 8th grade, we do very well. So even some of those kids that aren't getting it by 3rd grade
are getting it
I think the message is all is not lost.
Right.
So let's maybe intensify a little bit more in 4th grade and 5th grade, but by 8th grade, the data look really good. Yeah,
who wants to give up on a child in 3rd grade? Oh my goodness.
But no one would actually do that. But it's just it's a way for us to remember that that's a benchmark that if they haven't met, let's just keep it up, because in 8th grade we're really seeing some really good scores in 8th grade.
Yeah, that's great. So, Tracy, do you have any educational pieces you can toss in?
Educational pieces? You know, it's all kind of Chinese to me because I have twins who are almost 3, and I'm just starting to wade into...
If you have twins, everything is Chinese. I'm just telling you right now. It will be for a couple more years.
But I'm still trying to figure out the whole preschool situation, and you know, which preschool do I want to pick them, you know, pick for them, and that kind of thing. So there's so many choices. It's a little overwhelming for, you know.
It's awesome that we have that many choices.
It is. Yeah, it is. I've got adult kids now, and so I have one who, you know, I've got several who just graduated from high school. I have one who graduated from a charter combination with UVU. So he got his associate degree at 18. I'm like, woohoo, rock on, baby.
That's great.
He's well on the way to the 66 by 2020. You're doing your part.
Yes. Well, he graduates this year with his bachelor's. So this was a few years ago, and he's married now.
I'm going to mark that off my chart.
Yes. One down.
Let's see. 750,000 to go.
So it's just that there's a lot of combinations, right? And my mom had twins, and I had artificial twins, meaning I adopted the same age.
We all have twins in this
Okay,
group.
that's weird.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you do. Ooh,
I do.
Maybe
Twins.
it's in the water.
Twins. I'm a twin.
She's a
And I have
twin.
twin sisters.
And I had to adopt. But they're not biological twins, but they're the same age.
So they're almost
That
kind of raised like
counts.
twins.
I have 2 sets of triplets that way, right? So I have one that's turning 18 this year, 3 of them, and I have 3 13-year-olds that are turning 14 this year.
Wow.
So
God bless you.
I know, right?
That's all I have to say.
I have a total of 11 teenagers at home right now, and it's like, yes, please. I will take that tiara any day.
Well, and you completely understand how the differences in educational choices make a difference because each child is different.
Every child is different, and that's what...
And each family is different.
That's right, and that's one of the things I really love about educational choice, right, is that you can look at each child and say there's not a one-size-fits-all, right? And that's what I think is great about looking at how do we best reach all of the kids in Utah. Because some are going to be gifted, some are not as gifted. They're gifted in other areas, right? Everybody has skills and talents. In fact, I just read an article about a young man with autism who is nonverbal. He doesn't communicate with anybody really, doesn't have any social interaction, and he is an absolute whiz at putting together IKEA furniture.
Wow.
He's actually created a business.
Which is hard.
It is.
Yeah, it's
So he can look at the diagrams.
Can I hire?
Yeah, well, he doesn't live in Utah, but but he can look at the diagrams and they make total sense to him. He's just
And
a
then he
whiz.
does
He
the
puts them
visuals.
together really fast, and he doesn't have to talk to anybody while he's doing it, and then he goes on to
Saves a
his
lot of
next thing.
marriages.
Yes. So everybody has strengths, right? It's great. So, well, Tami, thank you so much for
Yes,
joining
I'm
us,
sorry
and
that I
good
have to
luck
leave
in
early,
your
but
That's okay.
thank
good
you
luck
for-
in your new
thank
position.
you for all that you
Congrats.
do.
So,
Thank you.
yeah,
All
good
right.
good luck.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. So, Tracy, I want to hear about the Department of was it Corrections that you were with?
So I was with the Department of Commerce.
Commerce. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, I knew it started with a C. My bad. I flunk.
But yes, so I was with the Department of Commerce for a few years.
As an attorney.
Well, so I was the director of the
Okay.
which is an appointed position. So I come from, so I'd been an assistant AG with the AG's office.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so
Oh,
I
I
did-
did know that. Yes, I
Okay.
did. Yes, I did know that.
But I'd been, so my professional background was, I started out as a private practice attorney, so I was with firms for several years. And then when my husband
Got his postgraduate degree out in Indiana. When we moved back here, it was sort of a choice between do I go private practice
Government
with a
or-
firm or do I go government? And I had two different offers and kind of weighing the the work-life balance.
Yeah.
I went with the government because I thought I've done the private law firm thing. I've done the hours. It's long. It's kind of hard on your family.
Yeah.
And so I chose the government position, and that was a culture shock in and of itself, just going from private practice into government practice. But then as an assistant AG, I represented the division of real estate, which is housed under commerce. And so that's how I sort of became, I guess, aware of
Yeah.
all of the different divisions within commerce and
Right.
familiar with everyone there. So
So what were your day-to-day tasks? What were you in charge of?
So consumer protection is actually, it's kind of funny because, so it's, the bread and butter of it is consumer transactions. So just sort of like business law, like whether or not there's misrepresentations in any kind of purchase that a consumer is buying for like household or family use, not the small business,
Right.
like that's not covered. But that's kind of where most of the complaints would come in is like, oh, I didn't get the thing that I ordered, it wasn't the right thing that I ordered, or I paid money for this and then they didn't deliver it, just that kind of thing.
Right.
But then consumer protection also regulates charities. So all of the charity filings went through that division.
Wow.
All the pawn shop filings went through that division. The career colleges go through consumer protection.
Interesting.
So I mean, it's just like this hodgepodge of like
Huh.
all these different kinds of franchises go through there. I'm trying to think what
Internet
else.
sales.
So, well, internet sales was like a huge, I mean, that was like a huge source of
Right.
complaints that would come in. So, yes, but I think fraud was kind of where we were really focused on. So, but the day-to-day of it, I mean, as the director, you're a manager, but you're also sort of figuring out policy and
Yeah.
where are we going with this and what do we want to focus on and what's our enforcement efforts going towards and what do we want to crack down here and how are we kind of responding to complaints? How are we being proactive?
Yeah.
So,
What was your relationship with the legislature? Would you, check certain bills or push for certain
So-
bills, or did they ask you their opinion? Your opinion?
sometimes, like, so we typically had, I mean, because there was 16 different statutes that we enforced as a division. And so sometimes.
That's it?
Yeah.
Seems like it could, with all of our statutes on the book,
Just
it seems like it could
16.
be hundreds.
So, but it was just the 16, and every once in a while you'd have a senator or representative who would run some kind of bill that would impact one of those.
Right.
And so if that happened, then usually they'd call and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Can you give me your input on that? And I always appreciated that because I felt like they were doing their homework.
Right.
and they were actually trying to get that insight because sometimes you could say, yeah, this is a problem and here's
Person
what we
involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is what we'd really like to see. Or sometimes, they'd come in and not totally understand the issue. And then once you gave them that educational background on it, then they'd say, I don't know how I feel about this anymore. Maybe I'm getting pushed in the wrong direction by my constituent.
Yeah.
And so I think that the relationship, Commerce always stressed that we needed to have a good relationship with the legislature and that we needed to always be open, always be available to them.
great.
And so, and I think that way we could serve as a resource. But then we had our own bill. I mean, like we did several tweaks to our statute where we were trying to update because fraud is always changing. And so you're always kind of trying to stay a step ahead of it. And so then I'd have a sponsor. So I used Derek Brown as my sponsor. And then Pat Jones was on the Senate side.
Yeah.
So then they would, help us with that bill. And it was different every year, just depending on the topic.
What's your feeling of the saying that Utah's the fraud capital of the nation. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that.
Why?
So, because I think there's a lot of affinity fraud. I think that people here are very trusting of those within their same.
Can you explain that a little bit more? The
So-
affinity fraud.
Affinity fraud is basically somebody that you trust or somebody in your social group that.
Like a church?
Like a church. So, and we have a predominant religion here, and so a lot of members of that particular religion are very trusting of people that live within their neighborhood that they feel like they see every day or that is in some kind of leadership position. They trust them. And so they don't necessarily do their due diligence when they get pitched with something. So I think you see a lot of fraud and securities that way, and you see a lot of real estate fraud here. When I was with
In what form? Like, I mean, so I've been in the same house forever. I'm not involved in the real estate market. So what is real estate fraud? What does that look like with affinity fraud in real estate?
You know, I think it's mostly where you had these groups where they were saying like invest with us.
Invest, and
we're
your
going
money will grow.
We're buying properties and then selling them for profit.
Right. And they it would be equity skimming was kind of one of the scams that they did, and so, but it was really kind of based on relationships where it's like, oh, friend of my friend is putting this together, and you know, normally I'd want to see a prospectus, but I trust him, so I'm sure what he says is true. I'm just gonna, you know, give up $50,000. So I'm going to go raid my IRA, and I mean, it's just really sad. So, but there is a lot of fraud that happens here.
But don't you think, see, I guess I wonder about the statement that Utah is so predominant here, because there are other states that have these dominant religious communities that the same kind of activity goes on, California and New York and Florida. And so I guess I push back that Utah is you know, that we're the worst.
I don't know that I say we're the worst, but we definitely have more of it than what I think people suspect is actually going on. And maybe that's because there's just a mentality of it doesn't happen in my backyard, but it does. And actually a lot of it comes out of Utah County. So I think you've got a lot of...
I'm sorry.
Well, it's good that you don't know what it is. That means you haven't done it.
Then there's the trusting, naive Holly. Really? That goes on? Really? I mean, I know from a broad perspective.
You haven't invested, so you're good.
I haven't invested. I invested in my family. Who has 50 grand to invest in anything else besides braces and cell phones for the teenagers? So.
Right.
Well, and I don't mean to pick on Utah County, but what I mean by that is that I think that you have such, like, you've got the BYU and the Utah Valley University down there, and it's got such a clean-cut image that you've got a lot of people who flock to that, knowing that that's a good front. So I think it gets used that way, and people are so unsuspecting that it's sort of this relationship that happens, and it's unfortunate.
Right.
So
people should be doing due diligence.
they really should.
They should. Look, and this doesn't have anything to do, I'm sure, with the larger levels of fraud, but I have an adult son who bought a car off of KSL.com. He didn't want to ask his parents for advice, and they said, wire us the money and then you can get the car. Well, he lost $4,500, right? And he was working at Subway. That's a very painful lesson for him.
Yes.
And we could have helped him see that, because at least I have the sense to say you don't wire money to somebody that you never see the car.
Right.
But all of his siblings now too know that when they buy a car, they're not going to go and do that kind of stuff. So it's certainly some of it is just getting out there and saying, look, this stuff does happen.
Oh, yeah.
And you need to be aware. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, that's like, if you're actually going to perpetrate a fraud, that's the way you would do it. Is that you'd say, you know, I'm going to make a deal look really enticing.
Sure.
And so I'm going to draw on more people that way. So I think that anybody who's, you know, if you're cautious and you're like, why is this such a great deal? It's like some alarm bell should be going off. So,
Yeah. So what is it you do now?
So now I actually left my position with Consumer Protection to stay home with my kids. So I am a full-time mom, and then on the side, my hobby is I serve as commissioner for the Draper City Planning and Zoning Commission. So it's kind of a way for me to get my real estate background experience sort of, you know, in there and using that, because you feel sort of underutilized, I think, when you are no longer, you know, in the professional arena. So, but you have all this experience and you're thinking, it's just going to waste, I gotta do something. So,
Well, let's not waste it at home, let's just say.
I know what you mean. No, but it's,
but there's more too, and there's certainly value that you bring to that. So tell me actually what you do. with, what is it that you do?
On
Do
the
you-
planning.
Oh,
On the planning.
okay. So, I mean, basically, it's two things. It's either zoning changes, where somebody comes in and they want to change, usually from resident, like RA1
Sure.
to something higher density, because everyone wants to sell off their big, huge parcels
Right.
and develop them,
Right.
because Draper's just filling in.
Right.
Right.
And so that's really what's happening, because there's really no more land
Right.
left there, and so people are just kind of changing that. And then
Is it a committee? Is the commission 5 people, 7 people?
It's
and
7
you vote
people.
on those?
Yes.
The zoning, okay.
So like it'll be somebody coming in with the application to,
Yeah.
to rezone, and then you've got to go through all those different standards. Or it's somebody asking for a conditional use permit where they want to run like a hair salon out of their basement or something like that. So
Right.
cookie business or.
How did you get on the commission?
So I actually, Draper just asks for volunteers. And so I think I almost have
great.
forgotten that I had even gone and done that, because I'd gone and signed up and been like, that would be something
Interesting.
to do.
Yeah.
And it's a really good way to sort of get your feet wet before you kind of jump into a city council
Yeah.
type of situation, if you're interested in going that way. Because then you really do kind of get a sense for like, what are the issues in my community?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's actually an excellent way to get started.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
great. That's good advice. So do you know who I saw tweeting yesterday?
No.
Mark Shurtleff,
Oh.
Really?
tweeting
On
on
Twitter?
politics. Yes, Twitter. About he didn't analyze it, but he quoted the article on the polling for caucus and how it's an uphill battle against CMV. But he didn't. So I'm curious now, because people would assume that he is for the caucus system, but he quoted something that was for CMV, count my vote, and so makes me wonder. But I didn't ask him.
I have nothing to say.
Do you have anything to say, Tracy?
I thought he moved to DC.
He moved back.
yeah.
Or I
He
don't know. He
opened
might
a-
still be out there actually, but he's out in Utah a
Open to
lot.
consulting.
He has his own consulting firm. Yeah.
Does John Swallow work
Mr.
for him?
No, Mr. Swallow has his own legal firm,
Right.
law firm.
Right.
Does he? Okay.
Yes.
He opened one with his wife,
With his wife on the.
who's not an attorney.
Oh.
Just a side issue as well.
Okay.
Might be another ethical dilemma for him to work through.
That's
Yeah.
never stopped him.
No, and he's turned out okay so far. If there are no.
we are opinionated on this panel. There's no question. So, yeah, I that doesn't surprise me that that Mark Shurtleff is still trying to stay in the mix of Utah politics a little bit. I think he's hoping to not be taken down in everything that's going on right now
Right.
with ongoing investigations. But I saw the same numbers too, and I actually tweeted the same kind of thing. So while I am in support of the caucus system, I do think it's an uphill climb.
Right.
If the Count My Vote people actually do get the signatures, it's going to be, I think, a hard battle.
Right.
Because there's so many people now who are saying, look, 71% or 74% or something say, yeah, I really think that we should just open it up.
Right. Which was interesting from that survey, other than they didn't show us the actual survey, was that the people didn't understand. They weren't educated about this system. They don't know what it means. And we've been
Yeah.
saying that all along, saying that is a problem.
Yep.
And one of our biggest areas of improvement is education.
Right.
And I mean, nobody disagrees that we want more participation in
Right.
the system. We need
Well,
more
and I think
participation.
that's sometimes where we fall down on the messaging on our
Yes.
side,
Yeah.
is because it sounds like we don't want more participation.
Right.
We
And-
do
and then
have
you
people
have
who
the
stand up
few-
and say things
yes.
like, I don't really want more candidates, I only want qualified
Right.
people coming and running as delegates. Well, I want to open it up as well. I want more women to be involved. I think the fact that you're now doing something with the commission down there is awesome, right? And it's a great way that you can be involved. It's not a full-time thing.
Right.
And it's
and understand the issues,
Of
in
your area.
preparation for city
Yeah.
council or
Yeah.
state government or
all
any,
of those
yeah.
things, all of those things, and it's a great way to be involved. And I think sometimes we look at it and we go, we as broadly, but as women specifically, we look at it and we go, because we're busy with our families, because of our other duties, even sometimes church duties or whatever, we don't have time.
Right.
Well, it just depends, right? You don't have to do this 24/7 to
Right.
be able to make an impact. You're making an impact in your community, of course.
Right.
Thanks.
But anybody who volunteers at the library, right? Or
Right.
you go in and you work at your kid's school, that's political involvement, but it's not something where you have to.
PTA.
Yeah, PTA is. But anything, parent council or like our charter schools, the kids where our kids go to charter school, we have to have parent hours where we're involved. So it's volunteer hours in the community at some level, right, working with the school. But there's so many needs. It's what you're saying. Go down and volunteer. You know, cities have long lists of of things potentially, but even the governor does too, with boards and commissions.
Right.
In the state, there's always openings, and they're always looking for people who are willing to serve.
You increase your network,
yeah.
you increase your wealth of knowledge.
Yeah,
You
and you
become, because one of the biggest barriers for women is this feeling of I'm not experienced or I don't know how to do that.
That's how you get the experience.
Right.
Yeah, that's how you get the experience. So Governor Walker, Olene Walker, a couple weeks ago was talking about that in a training that I was at for Real Women Run, right? It's trying to encourage more women to be involved in running for political office. And one of the things she said was, you wouldn't run for governor with zero experience, right? You have to have some kind of experience building up to that. So whether it's on your city council or a commission or a state legislature, whatever it is, you can't, generally speaking, it does happen actually occasionally. Generally speaking, you can't just say, hey, I think I'll run for something today.
Right.
Especially as a woman. You have to have been out there. It helps you understand the issues and get to know people and what they're facing, what they're talking about, all those types of things. And I just came from a meeting where we were talking about the different styles of women who are just in leadership positions. We're much more collaborative, right? We're talking to people and saying, hey, give me your input. It's not saying I agree with everything that everybody says, but give me all the sides, because I want to be able to put it together and, and help make a decision that is as close to win-win as we can get, for sure. So is that what you've seen?
Yeah, there was that article though that came out by Professor Bowen the day before, Real Women Run, Utah Valley University professor. She did the survey. It was curious to me to see that her polling showed that women, while they're getting more involved, they're still participating less. So they're talking less on committee, and when they do talk, they're seen as being aggressive or overtaking the conversation.
I think we've mentioned that before. There's first of all, there's a book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg.
I've read that.
Right? She's really
read it?
great.
Yes, it's good.
Yeah, and she talks about the issues that women face, whether it's political or business or whatever it is, right? When there are some differences in how women are perceived, even if their resume is identical to a man's.
Right.
That's okay, right? We are aware of it.
Right.
But it's a way to encourage women. When she says, take your seat at the table, Sheryl Sandberg gives an example of walking in a boardroom. You've got this big table, and the women, even though they're upper level executives, are sitting on the chairs in the perimeter.
Back of the room.
And she's like, take your seat at the table. Sit at the table, right, and speak up and feel like you can do that. Do it if you, moms do this all the time. If somebody's bullying your kid, you speak up. Right? You're going to make sure that problem gets taken care of. It's the same type of thing, whether it's politics or it's business or whatever it is. It's you're speaking up and saying, look, this is a different perspective, or this is not okay, or this is what we bring to the table. You're admissions dean down at BYU. I mean, how many do you have women applying now at greater numbers?
Yes.
So tell me about that a little bit.
It's they love to come in and see a woman in the the spot with kind of a similar story. I went to law school kind of with the idea of, well, I'm sure I'll be married by the end of law school, but I've always wanted to go to law school, and let's just go here where Well, I wasn't married by the end of law school, so I went to New York and I practiced, and it was a great experience. And you never know what never know what happens, and it's empowering for a woman to see somebody with a story similar to theirs, or we also have many married students, married women coming in and saying, I feel like this academic pursuit is worth it, and and I want to work after, or I don't want to work after, but I still want to go to school here. And I think it's a kind of a moving generation. They're more willing to put themselves out there. They're more willing to see that they want to be part of the community, business, legal, all of it.
Yeah, that's I think it's great, and I think the more we're willing to speak up and say, look, take your seat at the table, come participate, speaking to young women, because it's getting them before they get totally enmeshed in, I really can't do this, right? But yes, you can do this. And I see it even in my 13-year-old daughter who plays basketball, and she's raised in a household with a strong mom, right? And she says, oh, I couldn't try out for that team. Like, she's like the star of the 8th grade team,
Right.
And she's like, oh, I couldn't try out for the 9th grade team. Oh, yes, you can. And even her coaches who are guys, but even her coaches are saying, oh, yes, you can.
Yeah.
But she just somehow has this, oh, I can't do that because I'm not perfect. It's okay. Nobody's perfect. And we talked about this last time, right?
Yeah.
You're not perfect. You're not going to know everything about the job until you
Right.
get into the job and you start working.
Right.
So, anyway.
Good. Cupcakes? No cupcakes?
I didn't make any
Sign
this
off?
week. Did
No,
you?
I know.
Well, we have the legislative session coming up, but
It'd be great to be a part of. And
yeah,
watch and-
we'll broadcast from the Hill next time, and this is a cupcake-free zone. At least we don't do the baking. So, thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.